Welcome to January's podcast. I think I'm on week 3 or 4, which this Aquarian woman is very proud of herself for sticking with it and following through, because it's not my pros and my personality, but here I am. And today I have another special guest for you, Alaya, with Alaya B coaching. Now, Alaya has informed me that she has been following me on social media for a while, and I became aware of her Instagram and her movement because she tagged me in a post she reshared of mine, and it caught my attention. My DMs get very, very busy. I don't catch all of them, but I caught hers and I said thank you. And then she messaged me back this just beautiful message and response, and we got to talking. I followed her back, and the next thing I know, I'm asking her to be on my podcast. So welcome, Alaya. Thank you for joining my podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm fangirling quietly. I'm just trying to keep it cool. But it's so wild for me. I'm so excited.
Oh, thank you. I'm sure by the end of this, I'll be fangirling over you too, because I love everything that you post and all the messages that you put out. And I will be perfectly honest with you, I don't find that very often. So when I do find that, I'm really grateful for it. So I'm actually really excited about this podcast and intrigued by what you're going to share with me and with those who are listening. So if you could please introduce yourself, who you are, what your mission and purpose and goals are for your work.
Yes. So I'm Alaya B coaching. Like you said, I started my account maybe like 2 years ago at this point. Wow, I can't believe it's been 2 years. I could be off with timing. Math is like really my poor subject. And originally it started as a parenting account exclusively.
Okay.
But I always knew that I wanted to branch out into just bigger things. It's so funny because I've worked with coaches here and there, like business coaches, and they always ask me, what's your niche? Right? What's your niche? That's the best way. Get your target audience. And I'm like, I don't have a niche. I don't want to be limited like that. I just want to talk about whatever I want.
Yes.
When I want to. Which I guess also ties into my mission, is that I don't actually see people and personal development as niched. We're way too holistic for that, right? We're too nuanced as human beings. Like, how do you separate the parent from the person?
Right.
How do you separate the individual from the relationship? And how do you separate the adult from the inner child? You can't. It's all one big, messy, gorgeous package. So for me, when I'm doing a parenting story and I have people reach out to me and they say, I'm single and childless. I'm 19. I'm like, this story is perfect for you. This story about 4-year-olds not sharing is perfect for you, right? Because it's all so, which is really my mission statement. Like the name of my business is my name, Alaya, which is actually a name that I chose for myself. I don't know if you know that.
I did not know that.
Yes, I thought you would like that.
Yeah, I do. That's awesome.
Yeah, I chose my own name a year ago or
so. Good for you. That's wonderful. Yeah. How did that feel?
At first it felt a little crazy, to be honest.
A little weird.
Who changes their first name?
Yeah.
Right? It's so bizarre. But I did not like my given name my entire life. It didn't resonate with me. It didn't feel like me. And I battled with it on and off, will this look bizarre from a business perspective? And then I was just like, fuck it. I'm 28 and I'm too young to have a name that I don't like.
Yeah.
And, so I just went to choose a new name.
Yeah, I love that. If one of my kids wanted to change their name so it fit them better, I would totally support that. You have to live with that name. Yes, I would.
That's not surprising to anyone.
Well, you're the one that has to live with it. So that's amazing. And I love that your coaching is named after you because, like you said, then you're not stuck in a box. That's actually why you might like this. That's why I started my January Harshie Instagram a few years ago, is because with Birth Without Fear and even Take Back Postpartum, I was stuck in those boxes, and I'm very multifaceted. There's a lot of layers and a lot of sides. And if I'm always growing and changing, then I needed a space where I could share that and be allowed to evolve and transform.
Yes, that's exactly why I wanted my business name to be me, because I am my business.
Right.
I am my own brand,
Absolutely.
and I chose the name Alaya, and it actually means like to elevate, to ascend, which is the core of my mission, is to just help people, empower people to elevate their lives, elevate their parenting, elevate their relationships,
Yeah.
any area of your life that you just want more, to just support people in rising up and becoming more and more of whatever they want to be, just better versions of themselves.
Yeah. Sometimes you just need someone to just guide you with that, and to, because we get stuck in our own heads. And like you said, you were overthinking changing your name, and then you realized it's time to stop thinking about it and just do it. I obviously really want that. So why am I debating this anymore? And something that I was really intrigued about, and I'm going to use that word a lot in this episode, just to warn you and everyone else intrigued, because so much about you intrigues me. But something that intrigued me about when I looked into your page and started following your account was that you had on there Tony Robbins coaching. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that real quick. So did you do his, does he have trainings, like workshops? Like, tell me a little bit about that.
Yes. So Tony Robbins is one of my 5 life inspirations. Like, I would say I'm a compilation of 5 different, I don't even know what to call it, right? 5 different people or movements that have really formed who I am. And he's one of them. He's actually the reason why I'm in this field. Well, I'm the reason why I am in this field and have this career. But it was at an event of his in 2017, because I had been a teacher for 10 years. I have my master's in education. I was a really good teacher, and I felt like I owe it to children to be in a classroom. And I also felt like I've invested 7 years and thousands of dollars into this degree. But at the same time, I wasn't making enough money, and I felt limited in the classroom. And I was like, what do I do with my life at this point? And I was at an event of his, and he was speaking about, just like becoming who you are, and what if you believed in abundance, and what if you got out of your own way? And I turned to the group that I was standing with, the people that I had met at the event, and I said, I'm done being a teacher. This is my last year as a teacher. I don't know what I'm doing instead. It's November. By the summer, I will have a replacement career. And I did it. And that's, so I took, he has a life coaching course called Robbins Madness Training. So it's his Core 100 course, and I took that. It took me about 4 months to complete. So it's like his practices and his strategies and his tools, which I love, because there's an endless amount of life coaching courses out there. And how do you know that the one you're going to purchase is one that you align with,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so, that's awesome. I went to one of his seminars with Brandon. Oh my gosh, I'm laughing because we've been together so long. I'm trying to remember when it was, but it was before we had kids, and I had my oldest when I was 24. So in our early 20s, over 20 years ago, we went to a full day seminar of his, and it was just so good. Like, the man's a master at what he does, no doubt about it. Yeah. And so, and I always remember when he was standing on stage and he was like, how are you saying things? You can say something nice and say it mean, or you can say something mean and say it nice. And he did that whole thing, and he went through it. And I was like, and that's what stuck with me from that day. Like, just how are you?
I think he said that exact line at every event I've been at, and every time I feel it. Like, every time, yes.
Yeah, I love it. I loved it. It was so great. Well, that is really, really neat. We chatted a little bit before we started, and there was a few things that I wanted to make sure that we hit upon on our time together today. And that is, the first one is, what does it mean to you, or what has your experience been in finding your voice, which I love that term, by the way. I've used that a lot. And reclaiming yourself, which is something that you brought up to me. Can you share your experience with that a little bit more?
Yes, sure. So a lot, like, that question is really about my personal experience and my personal growth in life. And, I come from a family, all of us have opinions, right? Like, in my family, I'm one of 8, and we are all loud and dominant and forceful and intelligent. And I say intelligent specifically because it's one thing to have an opinion argument, And then it's another thing to do it in a family where everybody's like spouting statistics and facts and, you know. So that meant that I was always comfortable being expressive, right? Always comfortable just talking openly, talking freely. But there is a difference between talking openly, freely, and loudly and finding my voice. Big difference in those two things, you know, because I can spout facts and data and theory. And then there's spouting me and my truth and my voice. And really a lot of that has come through my own personal development. And it's really intertwined, right? You can't really find your voice without reclaiming yourself. And once you reclaim yourself, you inevitably find your voice. Because, right,
Was that, well, no, I just want to add, was that, just real quick, if you can, like an elevator pitch almost, reclaiming yourself, like what does that mean for people that have just never heard anyone even bring that up to them?
For me, and I think for a lot of people, reclaiming yourself really is about who were you meant to be before trauma happened? Who were you meant to be before shit got in the way? Who were you meant to be before somebody showed up and told you, no, you can't. Shh, don't talk about it. It's not a big deal. Toughen up, right? Who were you meant to be before people showed up and said, oh, this is who you're supposed to be in life. This is the mold that you're going to fit into. This is the path that you're going to walk on. And for so many of us, that gets interrupted before the age of 5.
Yeah. It's usually that 5-year-old mark, I think.
Yes. Right? There's so much magic before that. And
there is.
Even earlier, especially when we consider intergenerational trauma.
Yeah.
It's like, who were you before your grandmother had that traumatic experience?
Like
60 years ago.
Yeah.
But that's really what it is, right? Who would you have been if you were just given the freedom and the space and the beauty and the ease to be that? Who would you have been?
I love that. And that will lead you to finding your voice right there automatically, right? That's really interesting that you said 5 years old, because I always noticed with, everyone knows I have 6 kids. So I noticed with every single one of my children that at some point between 5 and 6, that year 5, it's like the veil becomes thicker. Up until 5, it's just so thin. We're so connected to different dimensions. We just are. We're connected to different dimensions. We're connected to energy differently. We don't question it. We don't question our feelings and our intuition and our emotions and who we are. We don't question that. It's not until everyone around us is questioning it that then we start to, and then we we start closing ourselves off from all of that energy and that knowledge and that power and everything. And it's really interesting because each of my children, if they were younger than 4 or 5, and I asked them what the sex of the baby I was pregnant with, they just knew. And they were always right. When they got over 5, and like 5 and 6, they would doubt themselves and question themselves. But before that, they just confidently answered, and they always guessed right what the gender of our baby was. It was like little things like that no, I don't have like double blind studies for, but it doesn't matter. Like you said, when you're witness to that on a regular basis and you don't question it, but you embrace it, it's very powerful.
You know why that shift happens? And this is partially rooted in everything that I have studied and learned, and also just my own intuition and beliefs, is because we don't question truth, right? Even as adults, when something is a truth to us, we don't question it. And very young children are inherently tapped into the truth. And the truth of the world is intuition. The truth of the world is abundance. The truth of the world is unconditional love, creativity, imagination. So very young children, they don't question it, because why would you question truth, right? Up until, and we think as adults, when we have a 3-year-old who's showing up in their like unbridled, glorious, imaginative, unconditional loving selves, when they're 3, we allow it, right? As if like, we are giving them permission. We think we're humoring them, like, oh, she's just like imagining, right? And then when they start hitting 5, 6 years old, we feel like this like sense of responsibility, like, okay, now we have to start teaching them how the real world works. It's our job to, raise them and start teaching them the truth. But really, we're teaching them fears, limiting beliefs, false narratives, and we think we're guiding them. And so then we start presenting them with what we're, what we're calling truths, and then they start questioning their own truth. And that's where you see the veil start coming in. And then they're like, oh, I don't know, like this adult who's supposed to be so smart is guiding me. Maybe I should believe them.
Wow. Yeah, that's, I feel like we could do like 5 different podcast episodes from that alone. But it's so true. So my youngest is 5 right now. The synchronicity of this conversation is fantastic because
Baby's
living
5?
Yeah, she's 5. She turned 5 in February. I know. What?
I remember your pregnancy.
Yeah, me too. It was very long.
I can tell you the whole story. Brandon grew a beard.
Yeah.
So you had to get pregnant.
It just happened. It was not, there was no avoiding it at that point. Oh. But she's 5 and she's like a little mini me, actually. Out of all my children, she's the most mini me. She's an Aquarius like me. And she's
why she's the most you? Because you were the most you.
Yeah.
When you
yeah. Oh, I love that. Thank you for that. I'm gonna think on that more later. That's so true. And she's so fun. Oh my gosh. Like she just sees the world full of joy. And like this morning, she came and knocked on my door. I was getting ready. I opened the door. She's like, "Hi, Mom. Oh my gosh. I'm so happy you answered the door for me." Like she's just, she's like the little fangirl herself. It's amazing. And she just, every morning like that, she's just so excited to see me. And she gets really bummed out when she can't see me. And she came in my bathroom and she's like, "Did you take a bath this morning?" And I was like, "No, unfortunately not." Well, she's like, "Did you take your bath last night?" And I'm like, "No." She goes, "But you take a bath every night." And I was like, "Yeah, I know. I didn't get my bath last night." She goes, "Good. I don't like it when you take your bath at night." And I was like, "Why?" She goes, "Because I don't get to hug and kiss you again goodnight." And I just love it. I love her insight and I love the way she thinks about things. And Brandon and I just had a little, not argument, but a little disagreement the other day because he's like, "Oh, she's just, she's all over the place and she doesn't listen to us." And a lot of her behaviors can be seen as like bratty, And I was like, okay, yeah, we need to guide her in how to talk to other people and how to be kind and how to slow down and how to be thoughtful of others. Absolutely. I talk with her about, I'm human. I have feelings, when you do this or don't listen to me, here's my feelings. But the rest of it, like, let's just embrace it. It's so awesome. And she's fun. Like, she's just always in her own world. She sings in the backyard every morning and she walks around the backyard, talks to all the animals, sings. Like, my neighbor will message me and be like, "Loved hearing her singing this morning." Like all the neighbors can hear her singing in the backyard. Why would I want to change that? Like, I hope she's 19 going on walks, singing to the birds, like, I don't care. I don't care because I want to be that person, right? And that's what's so beautiful about raising children and then doing that inner child work on yourself is you change that. You change what you were just talking about. You stop putting that on your children when you do inner child work on yourself and you realize, I needed someone to embrace that part of me, right? And so, wow, I get the opportunity now to embrace that part of my children and I can become more fun again and I can become more myself before all of those things came about, whether it was for myself, others, whoever. And I love that about being a mom and having kids is that I get so many amazing opportunities to grow and get back and connect with myself. And kids are brilliant. They're brilliant. Like, instead of trying to make them more like us, I'll go to my kids and say, "Hey, I'm dealing with this situation. What would you do?" Because I know I'm overthinking it. I know that I have a million other voices in my head and now I'm confused as hell. But I'll go to one of my kids and be like, "What would you do?" And to them, it's just like straight cut answer. "You could do this or that." And I'm like, "Okay, thanks."
Say no more.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't going to.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing if we embrace that, then it's so beautiful for us to experience, to be on this side of it too. I love that. I love having a 5-year-old. It's bittersweet that she's my last 5-year-old because I'm also very, very fucking tired. So, you know, parenting is really, really, exhausting anyways. But parenting, when you're doing constant inner work on yourself and showing up for your kids, and I just told my kids at the table yesterday, we were all sitting around talking, and I said, yeah, I have a lot of fears surrounding this, and this. I don't want to get into them right now, but these few things. And I realized that they were not my fears and anxieties. They're my mother's and my grandmother's.
Intergenerational trauma.
It is. And it's about these few specific things, especially. And I told my kids, I explained to them, I said, listen, when Nanny was pregnant with my mother, I was actually inside my mother. Like, my mother had her eggs when she was born. And so we are all connected, like DNA, every way, psychologically, energetically, DNA, intergenerational, all the ways. And so I took on a lot of their stuff, and I'm working so hard to not allow that to rule my life now, and to sort through what's mine and what's not mine. And that's been very freeing the last few months as I've gotten deeper into my own healing and work, to be like, you know what? That one's actually not mine. That's my mother's, or that's my grandmother's. And so in my mind, I'll just say, you know what? I'm going to hand this back to you guys. That's for you to work out or not, but it's not for me to carry anymore. It's been a really, really interesting experience. I'm sure you see this all the time.
All the time. I want to just go back. I have comments on a few things you said.
Yeah, do it.
So, first of all, in terms of like having that child, right, that free-spirited child with a strong voice and a strong personality, and then it can be called bratty. So there's like the element of it where just, in general, girls and women with voices have been called bratty, right? And this, right, to just like keep us small and passive and quiet for centuries. Yeah. So it's like kind of separating what's bratty, what's culturally been labeled as bratty,
yes,
and then what's left that's actually bratty or disrespectful, etc. So then when it comes to that, when we see that in children, sometimes our control kicks in and our tendency to just shut them down kicks in, and we shut them down completely. And part of that is because we are afraid that we're going to raise a rude child, and then what will people think, right? And part of that is also because we have been suppressing our voices and our boundaries for so long. Whenever we see somebody, owning theirs and being loud with theirs, it triggers something in us. And either we're like, oh, that's bad, like, shh. So we want to shush them, or we get angry about it because I wasn't allowed to have a voice. You get to have a voice. It's like, no, right? So it's really about the work, and the healing is in separating, your voice is beautiful and own it, and your boundaries are amazing. And then, hey, as your mom, as your dad, it's my job to guide you. Here's how you can do that. So it's not about like, you can't say that or you can't be loud, but it's here's the respectful, considerate, decent, compassionate way of going about that.
Right.
And that's really all our jobs are as educators, as parents. That's all.
We're the guide. We're the guide. Yeah. But we have to be our self-awareness needs to be better, right? Like, if you have self-awareness and then you guide them, then it can come together really beautifully. But if the self-awareness isn't there, I mean, you're just setting yourself up for constant frustration. And that doesn't mean you have to be perfect. Like, being self-aware actually allows you grace to be imperfect, right? Because you're aware of it, and you can apologize, and you can do better, and you can like talk it out or whatever. So I love that. That's a really good point. I'm glad that you touched on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if we don't teach our children, if we don't give ourselves grace, so if we don't leave ourselves space to mess up, and I don't even want to say mess up, because it's not even necessarily messing up, right? Is getting angry messing up? Is feeling frustrated or disappointed or anxious messing up? No, it's kind of just living in your humanness, right? But if we show and model for children, like, hey, this is what anger looks like, this is what frustration and anxiety looks like, and here's how I regulate that with myself, and here's how I come back to a place of serenity and calm. And it's beautiful that I just went on that journey, because I obviously needed to feel that emotion. And here's how I get back still loving myself. If we don't model that for children, how are they ever going to learn that? And you see, right, anxiety and depression are at like a ridiculous high in children as young, like middle schoolers, 8 year olds,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So we
Yes.
have to start showing them grace. Otherwise, we're setting
Yeah.
them up to beat themselves up over things that are just human.
That's so true. And if anyone is listening to this right now and you're like really overwhelmed because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing everything wrong, please just pause and break down to what do you wish you had as a child? For most of us, it's just that we wish that we could have been heard and validated and then allowed to be ourselves. So if you're overwhelmed right now, just start with that. Start with, my kids just want to be heard, and just listen to your kids. Okay. Because I know these kind of conversations can be really overwhelming. There are many parenting books and stuff that I put down and walked away from because I was like, now I'm questioning everything. So just those basics, just start with those basics of they just want to be heard and they just want to be validated and allowed to be themselves. And then you can go from there, right? Because
And
otherwise,
they just want to be liked.
yeah, just like them,
That somebody likes them and
right?
finds them interesting
Yeah,
and enjoyable to be around, even when they're telling you those stories that have no beginnings, no middles, no endings, you know? Like, you know,
yeah.
that clip that's gone viral of the kid that's like, did you ever have a dream that, have you seen that?
I have not
Like,
seen that, but I'm sure I've experienced it many times.
like endlessly, you know? And like, really, they don't realize that they're like stuttering and stumbling, and 17 minutes later, they,
Right.
have yet to finish a complete thought, right? To them, it's like, wow, I'm interesting enough that somebody is listening to me.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. Oh my gosh. My days are pretty much filled with viral videos like that. There's so many times I said to Brandon, I'm like, if there was a camera in this house, like I can't even make most of this shit up. Like it's amazing, like it's phenomenal. Oh my goodness. Okay, anything else that you wanted to touch on what we said before I move forward?
Yes. So, with the intergenerational portion that you were
Yes.
speaking about,
Yes.
so first of all, if anybody listening doesn't actually know what January just referenced, because I'm like, yes, somebody who's well versed in intergenerational trauma, yes. So the three generations concept,
Yeah.
right? So in every single pregnancy with a female line, there's three generations inhabiting one body simultaneously. So
Yeah.
you have, let's say, the grandmother, and then she's pregnant with the mom. And then around the 4th month of gestation is where the fetus's eggs are formed for future generations.
Wow.
Isn't that so? In one
It's wild.
female body, you have 3 female generations.
That's wild.
So,
it's
isn't that
wild.
wild?
It
It's
is.
just like
It's actually
a lot of
like
pressure also for women, by the way.
it's
A
what
lot of pressure. A
yeah.
lot of pressure for women.
Yeah,
Like,
it's wild when you
have too
like
much pressure in general,
when I start thinking about it, I a lot of times have to like take a break from thinking about it because I'm like, whoa, I'm gonna break this down one little thing at a time. Yeah. So what does that mean for people
So what that means
or
is,
for women especially?
yes, I mean there is also the line like when a woman is pregnant with a man, like when his semen is developed. But let's target women for
Okay.
this particular conversation. So what that means is that a woman who is pregnant, what she experiences in her pregnancy is essentially imprinted on the generations that follow. So in pregnancy, it's heightened because you are literally a carrier of 3 physical generations. So if a woman is pregnant and she experiences a trauma, or if a woman is pregnant and she experiences anxiety or a difficult experience, so not only does that experience get imprinted on the generations, but more importantly, the belief systems
Yeah.
get imprinted. And that is really the core of intergenerational trauma. And this is larger than just pregnancies in itself, but intergenerational trauma is so much about the belief systems and the narratives and the voices and the thoughts and the perspectives of the world that get passed down from generation to generation. So it's why you can have in a family line, you can have, let's say, a grandmother that's an addict, and then, a son that is a codependent, and then a grandchild with depression. And on the surface, you would think that's three completely different experiences.
Right.
But if you start breaking it down to what are the beliefs that all three come down to, right? Let's say all three believe that life is just too hard.
Right.
So there's a shared belief.
There's a core.
So that belief is what gets passed down from generation to generation. And then you have, a child born in, let's say 2010, and this child grows up with this belief system, right? That, you can't trust people. Right? And where would that child get that belief from? They're born into a safe environment. They have friends. They're well liked. They're growing up in this great environment. Where do they even have that belief system? And yet that belief kind of follows them throughout their life, and it informs their decisions, and they can't escape from it. And if you start tracing things back, you will find that belief in a family line. And that is the beauty of it, is what you were saying before, right? Where you are learning to recognize the difference. What's mine and what was theirs.
Right.
And the freedom really comes when you identify this isn't even mine. Right. Because once you know this isn't mine, then you know that you can give it back or put it down.
Yes.
And that right there, it's just so liberating. Because if it's not mine and I can put it down, then it means that my life is no longer going to be governed by this. So, I can trust people. I can lean into the safety of relationships. I mean, how gorgeous is that type of freedom?
Yeah. Oh, nobody is going to come after me. That's a big one. Like my mom and grandmother, that trust and thinking that somebody always has it out for you. Which, by the way, being on social media doesn't help that. Because unfortunately, that fear has been proven right many times. And that's the problem when you have these core beliefs, is you're always waiting for it to be proven right. And you're looking for ways that you can prove this belief right instead of looking for ways to prove it wrong. Because 99.9% of the time, everyone wants to support and love and has your best interest at heart or admires you, whatever it is. But that 0.01% or that 0.1%, just proves you right. See, I can't trust people, or see, people have it, or whatever it is. And the moment you can start giving it back or setting it down, then you can focus on all those times that really that belief system was being proven wrong.
Yes. And what's amazing, and this is the proof in itself of intergenerational trauma and belief systems, is that, I also run an Instagram account. And every so often, right, I'll get a that's critical. And but when I tell you that they don't faze me, I do nothing. They wash right over me. I couldn't care less. I read them, and my immediate thought is oh, this is a damaged person. Nowhere do I take that in at all, because that's not my intergenerational trauma, right?
Yeah.
But maybe yours is one of the beliefs, is that people are out to get me. So those DMs really speak to you. And in the meantime, my trauma is a belief that life is just hard, right? That's because when my mom was pregnant with me, my parents' marriage was ending. So her whole pregnancy with me was filled with just a lot of heaviness. Life is just hard, and this isn't going to work out for me. And so that's one of the beliefs that I was born with. That's something that that I constantly struggle with. That things are just hard for me, And I see that. That's something that I have to consciously veer away from. And you actually might not relate to that at all, right? That's not where you necessarily go. But then I have a client of mine who, I just started working with her, and I'm sitting there in a session with her, and she's so young and gorgeous and interesting to talk to. And she's sitting there telling me well, the world is just dangerous. And at any point in time, somebody can just come into your home and attack you. And people are just not safe. We are just not safe. And I'm listening to this, and I'm like, do you have Holocaust survivor grandparents? And she's like, yeah, actually. And I was like, huh. And I started telling her about intergenerational trauma. And I said, let me reflect back to you what you've just been telling me. The world isn't safe. At any point in time, somebody can break into your home and attack you. You are basically always at risk of danger. I said, don't you think that's the type of things that people in the Holocaust would have believed and felt about their lives? Right? Yeah. And I was like, this isn't even yours. This is not your belief. You don't... Right. And obviously she's not going to just like magically get rid of it now in one session, but just
to have the awareness. That's the beginning.
Just the window of maybe I don't have to believe this.
That made me emotional. That really did. Like that made me tear up. That made me emotional because, wow. Yeah, that's pretty deep. I'm a fighter. And so it's hard for me to walk away sometimes. I think my grandmother had to fight just to be treated well. And, you know, she was having babies at a time where there wasn't birth control. There wasn't autonomy over our bodies as women, you know, relationships, like you were stuck in a bad marriage, like all that kind of stuff. And so it's really interesting to kind of see how that plays down. And so for me, when I walk away from a negative comment or a DM or whatever and don't engage, that's holding on to my power in myself, because I'm like, I didn't react in a way that I always felt I needed to. Like I always need to fight, you know, I always need to be heard, or I always need to like set people straight and not be misunderstood and all these things. Yeah. And that's the thing about when you become aware of it and you start putting it down and giving it back, is you do react to situations and people differently, because you're now reacting in a way that aligns with, like you said in the beginning, who you really are.
And you start getting agency over your own life.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're operating from a place of, I have to fight to be heard. I have to fight to be understood. I have to prove myself to you. That's really like, where's your agency? Where's your autonomy in that? If anything, that's like your grandmother is winning. You know, she's getting.
You know, it's interesting because I'm going to share this with you on this podcast right now. I've never shared this before, but I'm actually dealing with a situation like this right now, and I have been for quite a few years. So my grandmother is an entrepreneur. She's a businesswoman. She's my grandmother. I'm 41. So, you know, she's older. Her and my grandfather are realtors on the board of Salvation Army, authors. Like they work. Yeah. They're very, very successful in work life, not so much family life, but work life. Right. My mother, I have not talked to her in over 15 years. She's an addict and a very unhealthy individual and not part of my life. And so I do talk about a little bit about being a motherless mother. And then there's me, who I wanted to have it all. I wanted to, you know, go to school. I wanted to get my PhD in psychology. I wanted to get married when I was older and have kids. Life doesn't go how you plan. So I got married younger. I had a lot more kids than I had planned on, but I've always wanted a big family. I've always cried having a big family where there's just so much love and understanding and compassion and laughter and fun. And, you know, where you always work things out. And so that's what I've been working really hard on for 16 years. But in the meantime, because I wasn't in school and I was home with my kids, I found another way to have an outlet for wanting to do healing work. And then I turned it into a business. And then next thing I'm doing events and conferences and, you know, and running these platforms, and became an author. And everyone around me wants me to be a successful businesswoman. Everyone around me is like, you could do more. You can do more. You could make Birth Out Fear bigger. You could make this podcast bigger. You could make more money. And I want everyone to fuck off and let me be a mom. That's my core. My core is I want to be with my kids. I want to support my kids. But what I'm finding is I have no energy to do any of it at the level I want to do it, because I'm trying to do it all. And so Brandon and I have gone back and forth on this a lot, because he's like, well, if I had your charisma, if I had this, I'm like, but we're not the same person. And what you want from me, what you think would make me happy, actually wears me down completely and doesn't bring me a true sense of happiness and peace. Right? So everybody wants for me what they think is best for me. And then I feel drawn to, like, you know, this businesswoman entrepreneurial line that is my maternal line. These are some strong, badass women who all live into their 90s, who all work until the day they die, who are all entrepreneurs. And so that is in me. Like, that is where it comes from. But on a day-to-day basis, what makes me happy is not that. but everyone thinks it's what I should do. Interesting, huh?
Well.
Everyone can just fuck off.
But also, it's like, the crazy thing is, it's like you weren't gifted with these gorgeous character traits so that they could be weights in your life.
Right. And that's what they've become.
They're not meant to imprison you.
Right. But they have. That's what they've become. It's really, really interesting. And it's like, you also, when you're in a position like this, you almost feel like the whole world and your whole family and everyone is just gaslighting you. You know, like people just don't understand how you feel. And they're like, what's wrong with you? Like, you could do this, this, and this. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with me. That just doesn't align with me. Just because I can do something doesn't mean I want to do it or I should do it or that it will bring me closer to who I really want to be.
Mm-hmm. The most badass thing we can do is be happy.
Yeah, so true.
It's like, it's so crazy, but that's the thing that actually takes the most courage.
Yeah.
Is happy. The thing that should come freest and easiest and simplest is the thing that we're like clawing our way towards somehow. Mm-hmm. But really, the only reason why it's a battle is because we are factoring in other people's opinions into our happiness. Yeah. Right? But if we get rid of all of that, right, and go back to who we are, like a 4-year-old doesn't look at their, friend or their aunt and say, so in what ways am I allowed to be happy today?
Right. They just find happiness in everything.
Yeah, they just like wake up and find dirt.
Yeah, and they're like, awesome. What can I do with this dirt today?
Yes. Yeah. Did you see that video of that little boy who he went viral taking walks?
No.
But like he wants to say hi to, oh my gosh. So he apparently this 3-year-old.
Yes. I saw that one.
To people, right? And he's like walking down an empty street. Hi. Good morning. Hello.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't, like, nobody has to allow us to be happy. And the thing is that it's a joint effort. Yeah. They're telling us this is how you're allowed to be happy. And we're saying, okay, I'm going to follow that.
Yeah.
Somebody has to break the cycle. They might not ever stop, but we get to bow out.
Right. Most people think I'm kidding when I say, like even my husband, and my grandmother, like, especially, like, they're like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, when our kids are grown, I want to like adopt a bunch of teenagers that are about to age out of the system and have no family. I want to adopt senior dogs. Like I don't know. I want my house and my life filled with just unconditional love. I want my life filled with unconditional love. And the more you give that kind of love, the more you receive it and you have it in your life. Like, it's just like this it just constantly gives and takes. It's like a boomerang effect, right? And I love that. And like people just like, well, but in my family especially, but can you monetize that? No, I don't want to. I don't want to. You do not. I have this thought all the time. You do not have to monetize every single one of your passions. That doesn't make everybody happy.
Not all currency is money.
No, thank you.
And that is what people do not understand.
They don't.
The currency.
Yes. It's the
currency.
It's the most powerful one.
Fun is a currency.
Fun is a currency. Can we put that on a t-shirt, please?
God. Can we make t-shirts?
Yes. Yes. Coming soon.
Yes. And people are so narrowed into one currency.
Yes.
As like the godly one. Money is the only currency we need to pursue, and I'm like, no, Netflix is a currency.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, like I could have more clients on my roster. I have a waiting list of like 11 people.
That's awesome.
And like, if we want to look at like monetizing and hours in my day, I have the time technically.
Yeah.
But it's not just about money for me. My free time for me is valuable.
Yes.
And also, if I stack my day with clients and I see 15 clients a day, and I'm sure, right, you can relate to this in your home life as a parent, what type of care would I be offering to those 15 clients every day? I'd rather have 4 clients in a day that I can truly show up for and make less money. And
absolutely.
That's you with mothering. You
absolutely.
have 6 children to divide yourself between. Plus, January child. And plus right now you're in the process of 5-year-old January and teenage January and adult January. That's like 3 people to take care of on a daily basis.
Yeah, I've been doing some really intense healing this year, like really, really, really intense. But you're right. To me, rest is a currency and time with my kids is a currency. And those are like the most valuable ones to me right now. And they may not pay the bills, but I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay. Like, for me, this is just me. I'm like, well, the worst case scenario is we move in with my aunt. I don't know, but that's a lot of people's best case scenarios. Like, I just think differently than a lot of people, definitely differently than, my grandmother and my husband and a few other people too. But that's how I feel. I feel like, I rather have cut all my bills down to basics, which is what I did at the end of the year. Cut all my bills down to basic, try to work on my debt and spend time with my kids and rest. Because to me, those are like the most valuable currencies right now is rest and time with my kids. And it means more to me than anything else, and everyone around me, it's like swirling around me like, but you could do this, but you could do that, but you could do this. I'm like, yeah, but those actually cost me more than they will make me.
You always have to say, is it worth, what is the cost? Do I want to pay that price? And remember, we're talking about cost and price here. It's currencies larger than money.
Absolutely.
Also, I want to say 2 things. First of all, how happy is your grandmother?
That's a loaded question. I mean, I don't know. I know that, when I talk to her, we're really close. And and we have a relationship that is different than anyone else in the family because we connect in a way no one else can. So I'm the oldest of 6 kids, but I'm the only one with children. I'm the only mother out of all my siblings. And so, my grandmother used to say things to me like when I would tell her I was pregnant, she's like, what are you doing? You're ruining your life. Which at the time I was like, you suck. And then when she started opening up to me more about her past and her trauma and her history, I was like, oh, you felt it ruined your life, because it did at the time, and so these things I don't think she recognized in a way that she does now because of a lot of our talks. Like I would share a quote of mine about anxiety with her and she's like, this is how I feel. I didn't realize that's what I was feeling. So I know that she's incredibly happy. Like her and my grandfather are soulmates. I know she's happy with him. I know she's happy with her home and her life, but I know that she always feels unsettled, always unsettled. And we've had a lot of heart to hearts over the year because, with me, finances are always a mess. And finances with them are great. But with me, my motherhood journey has been pretty on point, and with hers, it's been a mess. And she confided in me a few Christmases ago, it was just her and I, and she said, I would trade you in a heartbeat. I would trade you in a heartbeat to have the mothering and the childhood you're giving your kids and have my finances be a mess any day. And that is huge, 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 huge revelation for her and for her to admit that. So if that gives a little bit of insight, I know that she's very happy, but I think there's always a little bit of this unsettling and, like a disconnect.
Mm-hmm. How did you feel when she said that to you?
Oh, incredibly validated. Like so validated. I was like, can you say that again so I can record it? Because yeah. So very validated.
That's how you know that you are in the presence of a truth. It's
love that.
Especially people who have been discounted or who have been turned off. It's so hard for them to even know, like, how do we know when something is true or right for me?
Yeah.
And that's why I always encourage people, go back to how you feel.
Yeah.
Because
when that's so great.
Non-truth, your feelings will guide you. They will let you know this is right for me, this is not right for me.
I love
so
that.
If in that moment it felt like almost like all is well, moment, that right there is like your emotional GPS.
I love that. Oh, I'm going to tune into that more. That is so good. So, for years, her and everyone in my family criticized, and some of my siblings still do, because, they're the best parents, even though they don't have kids. But they all criticize my parenting because I did everything different. Everything. I still do. And they all criticize, some lightly, some very harshly. And about 10, 11 years into parenting, my grandmother came to me and said, I know that I've said a lot of things, but just spending 5 minutes with your children, it's just apparent that you were the best mother I've ever known. That's what she said to me. And I was like, it took a decade. It took a decade to finally hear something like that. And a lot of people and moms and dads never even get that validation, but it took a very, very long time. And now she does. She really respects and honors me as a mother. And it's, I think, been very healing for both of us. Very, very healing for both of us, because neither one of us really had that.
Mm-hmm. What's so beautiful is that, from what it sounds like, my hypothesis would be that part of your grandmother's struggle is that she felt like she didn't have a choice.
Oh, definitely.
Right? Like she had to go the business route, or she had to,
Oh, absolutely. She did not have a choice.
And maybe you are going like all into mothering and leaving the business to the side, but it's via choice.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's so true.
On the surface look like you are, deviating from the family line of like entrepreneurship and like business mind. But really what it is you are turning to autonomy. And for you, autonomy is motherhood. Mm-hmm. And that's really the healing, right? It's so not about what you do with your life. Mm-hmm. It's just, did you choose this?
Yeah, I'm not okay with, the next 10 years of my life being like the last 10 years of my life. I'm not the kind of person that would change anything. A lot of good came from the last decade. It'll actually be 10 years on May 10th that I started Birth Without Fear. Yeah, so we're at the actual decade point. But that is my younger three's children's entire life that I was obsessed with and working nonstop on building that and doing that work. And I want to give the next decade to them and myself. And I'm okay with that. Everyone else just needs to get on board.
They might not.
And
that's okay.
Then they can get off the train, because I'm in charge of this train. And that's where we're headed. And I'm okay working, but at my pace. That's the thing is, but you could make it bigger, but you could do more. And it's like, but I'm totally okay doing this slower and at my pace. We're in an age of instant gratification and go, and more. Be the first to share it, even if it's wrong. I mean, how many mistakes are like journalists making nowadays because they want to be the first to report it, and it's like constant. I've totally left that game. I don't give a shit if someone shares it first. I don't give a shit if I don't make as much money. I don't give a shit anymore, because I'm not on that train anymore, because that train is a wreck for me. It's a wreck. Like it just, my physical health suffers, even my financial health suffers, my emotional health suffers, my relationship suffers, my children's, no. So I'm off that train, and now I'm on a train that I'm conducting, and it's going to go at the pace I want to. And if some months that's quicker, if some months that's slower, if some months that's just pausing at the station and taking a break, that's what we're going to do.
And what's going to be amazing is that, and this is just my prediction, but right, like you've mentioned, like all the people around me say this, and all the people around me have like this belief and desire for me, etc. Is that like my bet would be that as you pursue this new path of yours, you're actually just going to end up meeting new people.
Yeah.
Right, because back then, those are the people that you attracted because you were questioning that within yourself.
Yes.
Like maybe this is wrong or right. And as you shift, your circle will shift.
It's totally true.
Your spirits will shift. You're going to start meeting people and connecting with people that are going to be like, well, I mean, park in my station for a month if you want. Like, I'll make you a cup of coffee. Lay down on the couch, January.
Yeah, totally. It is true. Your circle does shift the more you shift. The more you grow, the more your circle grows and changes. I will say the hardest part of that is if there's people in your circle that you want to remain in your circle while you're shifting, that's where the harder work is, if whether that's your partner or, a sibling or a grandparent or a parent, but if you continue being authentic and true to yourself, they eventually start shifting with you if they're going to stay in your space. They do. Or they're not in your space as much. One or the other happens. They either start shifting out of your space or they start shifting with you in your space. But I just want to validate for anyone, like, that is not easy. That is not easy. That's the hard shit right there.
Yeah, no, it's very hard, and there's grief involved.
Yeah.
Won't shift with you.
Yeah.
There's a whole grieving experience that happens there. Mm-hmm. And if you are in that position and you are feeling like devastated or sad, and right, what's really interesting, what I'm seeing in my personal life and in my circle is that finally we're starting to shift how we perceive grief. It used to be that there was this monopoly on grief. Like, if someone dies in your immediate circle, you are allowed to grieve, and this is what it can look like, and this is how long it can last. And so then you have like just a whole world of people who are grieving things that don't fit what's allowed. And there's like so much denial of their experience and minimizing. Like, grief shows up in a variety of experiences. You are all entitled to your grief. And you don't have to qualify for grief. You don't have to earn it or prove it. And, you know, it's like really the only way to heal from an experience is to really just like experience the stages of grief. You know, we'll grieve some friendships.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of grieving that can happen when you're making these kind of changes, for sure. But like you said, you've got a GPS there that guides you and can guide you into what feels right and authentic for you, you know. And it's not even a matter of like, I have had to set some really intense boundaries with people, but, you know, it's not always that way. Sometimes it's just like, you know, a subtle shift that happens, you know, or it's just like something doesn't align as much anymore, or that friendship just starts to fade away. And and you need to grieve that. But if you also know that you're living your true self and for who you are, like you said, other people will come into your space, other opportunities will come into your space, things like that. I love that. I have a question for you. You had mentioned to me self-regulation. And I want to know what that means. So for those of us like me who doesn't know exactly what that is, or maybe I do and I don't know that's what it's called, can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of like, you know, technical definitions. So I'll just give a few because I think it's important, especially with a term and a practice of self-regulation, to offer a variety of options because we are individual people, and some of us are going to align with one version of it and others with a different one. And this whole thing of like one way, one translation just doesn't work anymore.
Right.
So one version of self-regulation is really, it's about the pause, right? Most of self-regulation happens in that pause. So there's a stimulus. You know, the majority of us, when we're operating from an unconscious place or an unhealed place or an unaware place, there's a stimulus, right? Something happens, react. Stimulus, reaction. And that reaction is going to be either what was modeled to you, what was taught to you. You know, it's going to be your emotions leading your way. It's going to be a total lack of personal control, a total lack of autonomy, right? You know how we spend so much of our lives as children, I'm never going to do that. And my father, I'm never going to. And then like next thing you know, you're 27 and like you open your mouth and your father comes out to your child.
Yes.
Right? Like, oh my God. Right? Yeah. So that's where there's no pause, where there's a stimulus and you're going to react with whatever is already input. So what's input is our own experiences, our own teachings, what was modeled to us, etc. So self-regulation is inserting a pause. And in that pause, we use self-regulatory tools, right? Deep breathing, which turns off our fight and flight response. You know, rational thinking, like how do I really want to handle this? So, you know, removing yourself from the situation for a moment, tapping into, you know, the 5 pages of the parenting book that you read last month and the idea that it had in there. So self-regulation exists in that pause, and slowly we start widening it, where now there's a stimulus, and instead of reacting, we've paused, self-regulated, and now we're responding from a conscious place, from a place of autonomy. How do I really want to show up in this moment? What is this child really telling me? Is this child being disrespectful, defiant, or is this child, you know, hungry or frustrated and doesn't know how else to handle the moment?
Exactly. I love that. I have those pauses a lot. Actually, that's why I got this. I'll show you.
Oh, the pause.
My play pause tattoo. Yeah, it's just, I actually do that a lot. And Brandon's working on that and has been working on that the last few months because it's just that initial reaction and missing out on that pause to think, how do I want to react, or what I want to say, or how do I want to handle the situation. And I love that pause, and that, as you call it, self-regulation, or it's called self-regulation, is really powerful. It's so powerful. At least for me, it makes me feel good about myself when I, because my mother actually does not come out of my mouth very much because when I was 19, I was at a fork in the road and decided that I was going to live my life completely different and make my own way and not follow the path of my mother, my grandmother, and everyone. And I made that decision very young and before I even had kids. And so this has been like front and center of my life and my mothering from before I even had children. And that pause, that self-regulation is really where I have found myself. That's where I have found myself and have found my voice, as you say, and that reclaiming of self is in that pause. Oh, I love that. I knew I was drawn to that for a reason.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
All in that pause. And like who you really are is in the pause. Because in that pause is also autonomy.
Yes.
Voice shows up, right? Like I can in this moment react the way my parents would have, or I can in this moment react the way my teachers told me to, or I can in this moment react the way society expects me to, or I can in this moment react the way my limiting beliefs and my insecurities and my self-doubt and my shame is trying to dictate. Or I can react in alignment and I can respond the way that I want to, the way that I choose to, the way that feels best for me. And that's where we unite our emotions and our highest self. Because self-regulation is really the combination of both. So self-regulation is the ability to actually recognize what emotion am I feeling in this moment, right? Because so many of us, live in anger, and really it's what's underneath the anger. Yeah. Is it sorrow? Is it sadness? Is it anxiety, right? So it's recognizing what emotion am I really feeling right now? What message is this emotion bringing to me? And then it's a combination of my emotions and my highest self. So with that emotion, knowing that this is how I feel in this moment, now, how do I want to respond? What do I want to say? What do I want to do? What's in my highest self's alignment to move forward? It's really the marriage of the two.
I love that. Sometimes I go too far the other way and I never want to disappoint my kids. So that's a big thing for us right now because, my kids are 16, almost 15, 12, 10, 9, and 5. So I've got older kids now and it's like they want to do something and they act disappointed. I feel like, it's the end of the world and it's really not a big deal. It's like I can't watch a movie with them right now. And so that's where my pauses are lying. I know doesn't seem like it's big of a deal, but it is for me because then I start going down this spiral of they're disappointed in me. And then I start getting frustrated and resentful. And so it's like that pause of it's not a big deal. If they're disappointed, I can't watch a movie right now. Let's not even try to remove the disappointment. If they are disappointed, it's okay. I'm not damaging them or hurting them or whatever. It's something really small and it's okay for them to wait and be patient.
On the contrary, you're empowering them.
Yeah, there you go.
Not only is it not a big deal and not only is it, a small thing and they'll get over it. On the contrary, this is how we raise them. These are the moments that they learn to handle their own disappointment. These are the moments that you empower them with the belief you can handle this.
Oh, I love that.
I would sit and watch a movie with you and it's disappointing that I can't right now. You can handle this. This is where they learn that they can handle life's disappointments. This is where they learn what they're made of. This is where they learn grit and resilience, right? And to believe in themselves. Yeah. So not only, are you not letting them down, but this is where you gift them with the opportunity to practice handling disappointment.
I love a good flip on a script. That was amazing.
That's you.
I love it. That's amazing. So something else that I wanted to chat with you is your belief that the power and grace and importance of female friendships. When you mentioned that to me in our DMs, it was like a punch. It was like a punch to the heart, not a punch to the gut. It was like a punch to the heart and I think that many of us are going to be able to understand each other on this and relate to the complicated dynamics of that at times. So share more why you brought that up and what you believe about that.
Okay. So why I brought that up is actually a combination of you and me.
Okay.
So I brought it up from me because it's something that has changed my life radically, I would say, in the past year. where like I have personally experienced the power and grace of female friendships and seen how they have changed my life. And I brought it up specifically to you because it's something that I have been observing of you, actually. You know, what's so interesting is like how this whole podcast came to be at this moment in time. It's so much more than just, it's so serendipitous because I feel like energetically, you and I started connecting as women when you started like letting it all out on Instagram.
Yeah.
Like I've been following you for years and I've been a fan of your work for years. But in the past bunch of months, when you have started showing up as a woman, that's when I've almost started being like, there's January, the woman, and I'm feeling her. I felt your struggles. Like I literally remember telling a friend of mine, guys, I feel like January is not doing well. I feel like she's struggling. Like, but really, it's when I started seeing you as a woman. And I actually feel like this is so important for your followers to hear because it's so easy to get very, very stuck in your perception of an account you follow on a pedestal and just seeing them as like, you know, this coach figure and this wisdom giver and this like, you know, just full of like light and, you know, that they see you as like this like figure above themselves and then they lose your humanity and they lose you're a woman and they lose that you are just like a sister, just like them with struggles and realness and rawness and ups and downs. And when you lose sight of that, they're no longer seeing you. Yeah. And that's where you start getting taken advantage of because they're like, how dare you show up as a woman when you're supposed to show up as a teacher?
Right.
I didn't sign up for, you know, and that's actually when I started loving you most.
Yeah.
Like, man, I love this woman. Like, forget like the movements. Just
Thank
January.
You. Thank you. Yeah, I love that. Thank you.
And I think a lot of that also came because I was able to see it because I have been on this journey of female friendships. And to me, I think that those are the most radically powerful movements in the world.
Yeah.
Women.
Yeah.
True, but true. You know, we use it as a hashtag, women supporting women, and it's such bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, but that hashtag is just full of shit and it's full of judgment. And it's actually in competitiveness. And it's like, look at me supporting women. Look at me.
But are you really? Yeah.
Like, really, 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 when women truly support women, you know, and talk about reclaiming ourselves, when women truly support women, that is when we go back to who we are.
Yeah.
Because women were designed to operate in communities. Going back to like the cave days, the men went out and hunted as individuals in silence. The women stayed home and came together as communities. And that's what we need to go back to really women loving women, women supporting women. And it really happens simultaneously, right? If you want to talk about like the patriarchy and using all these terms and is that, you know, the world showed up and the world told us, you know, hey, like women, be small. And also that's your competition. So that's their responsibility is that they started spewing that disgusting narrative. But our responsibility is that we believed it.
Yeah.
And we bought into it.
Yeah.
And we played along. And it's really time for us to stop playing along with that because it really just hurts, not just us, it hurts them, it hurts the world at large. You know, like our greatest grace will be found in female friendships. You know, I was once at like a retreat with my best friend who's like my soul sister, and this is like I think our third lifetime together. We're sure of it, you know.
That's amazing.
And like it was like a personal development type of retreat, and we were both just like chilling, you know. And I wandered over to check on her, and she's like, obviously the first thing she said was like, "You look so beautiful right now."
Aww.
Like that was the first thing she said, and then she's like, "Where are you at? Like, what are you thinking about?" And I remember telling her, you know, I'm actually seeing myself the way that you see me.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
In that moment, it was like I saw on the deepest level ever just how amazing I was. Right? Just how magical and wonderful and loving and lovable and powerful and big, right? And especially the terms, powerful, which I'm sure have also been used against you in ways, right?
Oh, yeah.
If you're a powerful woman, it's usually told to you either to hold you up to a crazy standard and like push you to do more, or it's told to you in a way of like, oh, you're like too much for people.
Yeah.
Rarely is a powerful woman told that she's a powerful woman from a place of love and praise and admiration, right?
True.
And it's when women love women that we start seeing ourselves the way that we truly are.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone else can really do that. Like, I think that men have their role in a woman's life, and the power of masculinity is gorgeous and important and necessary. But I think that the healing for women comes via other women.
I agree.
That is when we see ourselves as likable. That is when we see ourselves as beautiful. That is when we see ourselves, as human also, because women offer each other grace. When we get out of the competitiveness and the pettiness and the putting each other down, and we only do that because we're struggling and insecure within ourselves, but when we get out of that, that's when we offer each other the most grace, right? Like a true, like a real female friend, like my best friend would never in a million years tell me, you should take on another client, work harder, do more. Never. Right. If anything, she's like, just cancel your clients for the day, go buy ice cream, sit in bed.
Yes.
That's what he wants for me, right? And like when I speak to my friends and I'm like being hard on myself, like they're the ones that will tell me, you're being too hard on yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you're amazing, you're doing so much, right? And then I see the way it's shifting. Like, I have a really good friend of mine, and like as I learn things and as I experience things, like I remember telling her, I'm making a lot of mistakes so that you don't have to. I remember telling her, like, I'll take one for the team. Like, I'll fuck up and I'll experience this shit, and then I'll let you know how it went. And and it's like, and I'm like sitting there telling her, like, you're amazing. You're beautiful. Like, you are a goddess. You are so worthy. And then it's like, I'm watching her see that in her relationships with guys, right? Where she's like not tolerating certain things, or she's starting to like turn away from the type of guys that wouldn't appreciate her and wouldn't respect her. And that happens through female friendships. Only through female friendships.
So true. Because like if a guy criticizes me, I'm like, fuck off. But if a woman criticizes me, I'm like hurt more easily than if it comes from a guy. That's so true. That is so true. And then the same goes the other way around. I mean, when you have females and women friendships and they like support you and they have your back when you're not around, that means everything. I went through a huge transformation after I had my youngest 5 years ago. Huge. And a lot of my friendships changed because I realized all the friendships I had were falsely feeding my ego because of my movements. They weren't really friends with the woman. And so the moment I started struggling after I had my last, those friendships didn't last because I wasn't allowed to be human, and I deep down didn't trust them anyways. So it was a lot of things going on. And I really closed myself off from female friendships for about 4 years. And it was very lonely. It was a very, very, very lonely time, a very depressing time. And last year, I decided that I was done with that. And I opened myself up to new female friendships from people that had been trying to kind of, break through those walls that I had put up to protect myself, and people that I've met on Instagram, people that I met while touring for my book last year. And I met the most phenomenal women, and it just blew me away. And also because I've transformed obviously my friendships are different and I'm friends with different kind of people. And I can only be friends with women who have an abundance mindset. I cannot be friends with women who have a lack mindset, because that lack and scarcity comes with judgment of self and each other. And it's just a recipe for disaster. And like you said, this whole women supporting women and all this stuff, it's mostly bullshit. And during that time that I was going through this transformation, I dealt with a lot of harshness, judgment, gossip, ridicule, hate from doulas and birth photographers. And these are supposed to be my people.
Yeah.
These are supposed to be my women, and they're in a profession that is actually about women supporting women.
That is their job description.
Literally their job description. And all they do is tear each other and me and anyone else, especially when they're successful, down. And that's the difference between that lack and abundance mindset. And so when you have groups of women that are in that lack mindset, or are not living their true selves, or are not whatever, having that pause, having this, all of the things, when they're not doing those things, it's just like this cesspool of like hate and drama. And to do it under the guise of women supporting women is absolutely fucking disgusting. And so I walked away from all of that, all of it. I walked away from all of it. And Birth Without Fear, because this is why we have literally hit the core of why Birth Without Fear is one of my number one anxiety triggers. And I don't think a lot of people know that, but it is. And why at times I don't post to it. And many times I sit with the feeling of, is it time for me to say goodbye? Because of that right there. I am not allowed to be human in the Birth Without Fear space. I am absolutely not allowed to be human. I'm not allowed to hold my ground. I'm not allowed to be bold. I'm not allowed to fuck up. None of it. Why do I want to be in a space that I can't be human and I can't be my fierce self? Why? It happened last week on a post. And the next thing I know, I'm getting DMs, I'm getting hate, and I'm just like, this is why? Why do I want to put myself in this space? Because I'm not seen as human in this space. I talked with a birth photographer in Australia last year when I was there, and we talked about a lot of this because she saw a lot of it on the back end. And I explained to her, and I never make more drama. I don't call out people. I don't post screenshots. I don't defend myself. I just fucking walk away. Like, if I'm done, I'm done. And so I shared with her my perspective and my end of things. And she was actually stunned into silence for a while, because everyone put me on this pedestal and then expected me not to be human, right? And I did my part many years in upholding that. And the moment I didn't want to uphold that anymore, all hell broke loose. And what?
Like, how dare you?
Yes. And she said, but you led the way for so many of us. And I'm like, okay, but what does that get me? That gets me criticism. That gets me hate. That gets me a jealous response. And that's gotten me actually very, very few women who want to support me in this. I've had very little support in a decade in any of this.
And if you've led the way for them, where are they? Shouldn't
exactly.
They be there, like,
and I've never asked for recognition in that. But for some reason, people think that I am asking for that, and I'm not. And it's wild to me the things people have said and thought. And she said, but you led the way for so many of us, like in doing this and making this a business and doing all this and that. And I said, yeah, but where has that gotten me? That has gotten me hated. That has gotten me talked about. That has gotten me judged. That has gotten me in a place where I'm not allowed to be a human woman that also needs to feed my family, that also has children to take care of. The humanness aspect is not there for so many people, especially in the doula and birth photography circles when I'm talking about Birth Without Fear, because this is a perfect example with what we're talking about. I don't want to be in that space anymore. So I'm over here in January Harshy Instagram world. My account is private now. I don't use hashtags anymore. I don't want to be found by a bunch of people that are just going to put me in those same boxes and not allow me to be human. I rather half the people following January Harshy unfollow if they're not here for this. because it's not about numbers. I'd rather connect with 100 women who are here for this shit and this work than to have 100,000 followers who are expecting me to have all the answers or be on a pedestal or not be human or just waiting for me to fuck up, you know? And that's where those few female friendships are so powerful. We don't have to be friends with every woman we come in contact with, but to have a few other women in our corner who are also doing their own work that we're supporting them in. We're allowing them to fuck up. They're allowing me to fuck up, and we're there for each other, and we're supporting each other, and we see the goodness in each other. It's really, like you said, that's where that healing work is. That's where the support is. That's all we need to be like, I can do this. I can do this. And I am doing this, and I'm not doing it alone. That's my rant.
Yes, no, I love it. Right? When you go away from being January the movement to January the women.
Yeah.
When you're January the movement, that's when you attract all the like piggybacker pedestals.
Right.
When you being January the women, that's when you attract the sisterhood, the tribe, the community of women. And those people, right, the women that are going to show up for January the woman, they're going to be the ones that are going to be like, block that person. Don't even respond to that DM.
That's so true. Yeah. Like, they're the ones messaging me saying, hey, I just want to drop a love note in your messages because I know you're dealing with this crap right now. That's the kind. And I just want to say the transition of myself, from being that person that was probably aiding that to being the person who now just wants that connection with women and be human. That transformation for self was very painful and very lonely. But oh my gosh, I would do it 100 times over because I like myself better now. I like the woman I've become and am becoming now. And that matters the most because at the end of the day, that's who I'm with the most. Is myself. You know, I might be surrounded by a husband and 6 children and hundreds of thousands of followers on social media, but who am I with the most? Myself. And so I would go through that painful transformation time and time again. And there is something about turning 40, that 35 to 40 is such a huge growth time. And like, who am I really? If we haven't gotten there before, if it hasn't been your work before, it's a really beautiful time for us, especially as women, to come back into that reclaiming of ourselves.
You know, you mentioned the 40 thing in your podcast.
Oh, yeah. I mentioned it a lot.
And remember, I DM'd you after I heard the podcast,
yes.
And I told you to take notes on the podcast. I wasn't kidding.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that I took notes on because I was hearing you talk about, you know, like you and Jen, because Jen is also in her early 40s, and and I listened to that, and I'm like, no. Fuck that. We are not waiting until we turn 40 anymore.
I don't want anyone to anymore.
Yes, like what is this? Like we have this whole thing like, you know, your 20s are a decade of like, you know, insecurities and self-doubt and you know, and then your 30s is where you like, you know, stop caring as much and you start coming into your womanhood, and then your 40s is like really, why?
Yeah,
I'm
I agree.
29. Yeah. I'm not fucking waiting until I'm 40 for that. Like, I'm not waiting another 11 years.
No, don't.
And this is that when we subscribe, and you see it all the time, like all of these bloggers, when they turn 30, they all release the obligatory, you know, I turned 30 blog post. Okay. All the things that I'm now going to have when I'm 30. And I'm like, why couldn't you have that when you were 27? We need to stop subscribing to this. This is, again, systemic. No. Yeah. Women can be empowered when they are 21. Yeah. We can start finding the right relationships at 21. We can start finding the right friendships at 25. We can design our careers that are authentic to us at 28. We can be self-regulated at 16. Like,
yes.
You know?
Yes, my 16-year-old is, you know, my 16-year-old, I just look at her and I'm like, who are you? Like, I wasn't so sure of myself at 16, but she's also a product of a mom who's broken a lot of cycles, you know? And so at 16, she is not putting herself in the position of these awful female friendships. She's not putting herself in the position of any of this stuff. Like, she knows what she wants. She's not afraid to say it. And she's so self-regulated. It's unbelievable. At 16, more than anyone that I know, more than any other woman I know. It's incredible. And she's 16. And to kind of answer your question, I think a lot of us do this because that's just the way it is, which I hate. And that's kind of what society puts on us. So she's 16. This is a perfect example of what you're saying. And she knows what she wants to do with her life. She knows what she doesn't want to do with her life. And everyone tells her, oh, just wait. Just wait. You'll change your mind. And
that's going to change.
Right.
I also knew what I wanted when I was 16.
Right. Right. And first of all, she's allowed to change her mind as much as she wants. But second of all, why not just validate and support what she wants now? Why does she have to wait till she's 30 or 40? That makes no sense.
Let's say she changes her mind at 30. She's never going to look back and be like, thank goodness for Aunt Karen who told me at 16 I was going to change my mind. Otherwise, this would have been really devastating to handle.
It's so true. It's so true. And you know what? People, I should say family members mostly, but other people probably too. They look at us and think we're so weird. And it's like, because she doesn't want to move out right when she turns 18. She's like, why would I leave a home where everything's provided for me just because I've turned 18 or 19? She's like, 25 sounds good. Because she's like, I have everything I need, and then I can work and have the money I need to take care of my animals. Animals are her passion, so to her, she thinks so critically about it all instead of like what society tells her she should do or what, so I love it. I love raising kids so differently and like seeing them come into themselves at a way younger age than most of us ever had permission to do so. And we shouldn't need permission, but that's what happens. And so to have daughters especially, but to have kids where it's like you have permission from the get-go and ongoing to be whoever the hell you want to be, feel how you want to feel, do what you want to do. It's really, really cool to be able to then be the witness to that.
Yes. And I want to just take a moment and celebrate you in all this.
Oh, you're so sweet.
It's so easy. And I see this a lot with parents where they just start giving like all the credit to their children. And I see this with women.
Oh, no, I take credit.
I don't find anybody to give credit to other than themselves. It's like as women, we've been taught that we can't take credit for things and we can't honor ourselves and we can't celebrate ourselves. Mm-hmm. And yes, a huge portion of your daughter's beauty and strength and conviction is her own innate power. And a huge portion of it is you. Mm-hmm. You created that. You healed so that she could be this way. You gave her the permission. And just giving her the permission meant that you had to tackle the fact that you felt like you had no permission and grieve the loss of that and break the pattern. So it's really, you have done this. And that's really incredible. And I'm very proud of you. Just one woman to another.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I do give myself that love now. I really do. And, I do take... it's not taking credit, but I do say I know that I have done this work and I know that it is positively benefiting my children. And I know that it doesn't have to be perfect and that all my kids will have a different opinion of their childhood when they're adults, but I also know I'll be there for them then too.
They're all going to complain about something.
That's fine. And I'll probably either laugh with them or I'll acknowledge it and validate them as adult children. Our work doesn't end once they turn 18. I think in some ways adult children might be even harder. So not to discourage anyone, but so.
I'm more complicated now.
Yeah. And I'll validate them then because at the end of the day, even as an adult child, and Jen and I talked about this. Wouldn't I love that from my own mother? So if one of my kids grows up and was like, this was annoying or fucked up or I hated it, I'd be like, dude, I know that I did everything I could, but you're right. That was totally, I see how you feel about that. I totally validate that. And I love you. And what do you need now? Because, what else am I going to do? Get defensive? That doesn't help anyone, And so, that kind of parenting right there is just healing all around for everyone on a regular basis.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So we have definitely filled up our time today. Like I said, I think we could have done 5 episodes, one episode on each of these things because they're just so fascinating. So maybe we'll have to do a follow-up. But in the meantime, where can people find you?
So I've been building a website for a very long time, so that's not happening yet.
Okay.
Technology's not my thing. Uh-huh. So now I'm on Instagram at Alaya B Coaching.
Okay.
Alaya B Coaching.
And of course, all your information will be in the show notes and I'll tag you when we share about it online. And if you want to see the unedited video version, that is only shared on my Patreon, you guys. So just go to Patreon, January Harshi, the lowest tier is $5 and you get the videos of the podcast every single week, plus bonus content. And I have an episode about veganism coming out with my 16-year-old very, very soon. So check that out too.
Oh, I didn't even know about that.
Yeah.
I'll get that out.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and for the incredible, insightful conversation that is going to have me and probably everyone thinking a lot and checking out your Instagram for even more insight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I think this is just equally fun for me.
Oh, good.
Insightful and healing for me. Thank you.
That's awesome. All right. Thank you. All right, you guys, until next time. Love ya.